Hello and welcome to Real Turkey channel. This is Atilla Yeşilara, reaching out to you from Istanbul. It's a sunny day, beautiful day. You may hear the birds outside chirping and it's 40 degrees Celsius in the shade. You may be surprised to see 2 videos in a week, but events are progressing so rapidly. If I had the time, I would do a video every day. What is today's topic? Turkey may face early elections in 2025. Yeah, wow. I mean, we just had elections on 31st of March, see video below. And if there are elections next year, as I fear, then Turkey's economic austerity program will have to be stopped. No democratic government can afford to tighten belts when its prospects for remaining in power are uncertain. So this is really a very scary situation. I don't do clickbait. I don't exaggerate my claims that we will have early elections sometime in the second half of 2025 is not my most likely scenario. But compared to a couple of weeks ago, it has become a very fat tail, which means it's a risk that cannot be ignored and that must be incorporated in our investment and business plans. Why? Where did the early election talk come suddenly? Well, since last year's May elections, when President Erdogan and his ally Bahceli defeated the 6-party opposition coalition, there are 2 separate parallel processes going on in Turkey, which are of significant importance to markets or to anyone who cares about Turkey. A, after his unexpected 2023 election victory, Mr. Erdogan deleted his heterodox, unusual economic policies, reappointing veteran economics minister Mehmet Simsek to steer the economy to the right path. This is when the austerity program started. Actually, to be polite, I don't call it belt tightening or austerity program. I call it economic stabilization program. And its purported aims are twofold. A, to reduce Turkish inflation to single digits within 3 years. B, to render Turkey's chronic account deficits sustainable so that we don't experience a currency crisis or shock every year or 2. Since then, the program has made progress in terms of stabilizing the currency, but inflation peaked in May and further progress is not certain. These type of programs require at least 2-3 years to work their miracle. And of course, if Turkey is heading for early elections in 2025, it will have to be stopped at some point, which will bring us back to those horrifying days of currency fluctuations and inflation soaring, people rushing to get their dollars out of the banks, so on and so forth. A separate track is on 31st of March, Turkey experienced an incredible shock. Polls showed us that AKP was going to lose a lot of municipalities and wasn't going to capture back the 3 key large cities, Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. But the results were so bad for Erdogan and his ally Bahceli that, it took Turkey like 15 days to understand what the heck is going on. Not only did CHP mayors won big cities, but they extended their reach into the hinterland conservative Anatolia, where AKP was considered indefeatable, whatever. And apparently, the shock of defeat caused Erdogan to rethink his policies, and he started a process which is called normalization, which is actually, instead of cursing the opposition and calling them traitors and morons or any other names, establishing dialogue, a more consensual style of policy making. As we're familiar with Europe, that's how American Democrats and Republicans used to be, no more. Now, as part of this normalization process, he met with main opposition leader Mr. Özgür Özel twice, and after the last meeting, which took place on Tuesday, today is Friday, by the way, they resolved to continue dialogue. They are going to get together again on 20th of July when they visit northern Turkish Northern Cyprus Republic. Jesus Christ, I can't function in the heat. I'm a Neanderthal. I love cold weather. Anyhow, they're going to get together in northern Cyprus on 20th of July. So far, clearly no breakthroughs. Özel wants less austerity and more social welfare programs and higher pay hikes for Turkey's lower income classes and working classes. Erdogan wants to change the constitution, which, among other things, would grant him the opportunity to be elected a third term if the constitution is not changed or early elections are called by the parliament. Mr. Erdogan becomes a lame duck. By constitution, he has to retire in 2028 when the next elections are scheduled. Clearly, the dialogue will not result in any changes because both parties have different demands. I have estimated or predicted that constitutional change is very unlikely for a variety of reasons, but Özel and Erdogan could reach an agreement to hold early elections sometimes in 2027, which would give CHP to win it with their popular Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu and Erdogan sufficient time for Mehmet Simsek to work his magic and to go into the election campaign with a decent economy. Those of you in the United States probably know how important economic performance is. I mean, Biden, from the viewpoint of independent experts like us, have done a good job in terms of creating employment and reducing inflation, but people are still angry at him, and people are very angry at Erdogan. This is one other reason why he lost the local elections. So for him, elections in 2025 would be disaster. I mean, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. A, the electorate wants higher wages, higher salaries, more social welfare spending, etc., etc. B, if he does that, inflation will get completely out of whack, and he'll be punished one way or other. So it's a lose-lose situation for him. This is why I didn't expect early elections in 2025, and the opposition doesn't have the votes to push for it on the general floor. And suddenly comes Bahceli. On Wednesday, Bahceli essentially gave an ultimatum to Erdogan. He said two things. A, end this process of normalization, so no longer dialogue with CHP. B, close or whitewash a murder trial as soon as possible. The murder in question is the assassination of a young nationalist leader from Bahceli's party, Sinan Ateş, who was killed in a drive-by shooting. The culprits have been arraigned, they are on trial, but according to the indictment, this is a completely random event, perhaps a personal revenge, and has no connotations or consequences for MHP. But all evidence shows that forces in MHP, not necessarily Bahceli, but certain factions, higher-ups, have conspired or even orchestrated this murder. Another theory is that Sinan Ateş was very much against drug smuggling and mafia, and he knew that several MHP members of the Congress, as well as higher-ranking members of the MHP establishment, were involved in Turkey's booming drug trade. So Bahceli wants these aspects of the trial to be forgotten, the culprits to be punished, and the issue to be over. But apparently Erdogan doesn't want that because he received the grieving wife of Sinan Ateş, Ayşe Ateş, and promised full justice. Now that scares Bahceli. As I've said, I don't find him complicit in the murder. But there is so much evidence linking members of MHP to Sinan Ateş murder that if this trial is not concluded very soon and the subject dispelled from the national agenda, it's going to come back and haunt MHP. There is another case like that, a crime lord called Ayhan Bora Kaplan, who is also in custody. A typical crime lord, drug smuggling, prostitution, racketeering, and whatever. But he's also deeply connected to MHP, or at least that's what the witnesses say. So there is this possibility that Mr. Erdogan, through the courts, will have established enough evidence to blackmail Bahceli to do whatever he wants to. And Bahceli doesn't want that. The whole idea of Erdogan-Bahceli alliance is that with only 45 out of 600 deputies in the Congress and no representation in the cabinet, essentially, Bahceli runs the government. He takes no responsibility but enjoys all the benefits. Erdogan has to consult him to make policy in certain areas, such as what to do with the discrimination against Kurds, or what to do with, diplomatic relations with the West, etc., etc. Moreover, MHP is infiltrating the civil service and judiciary rapidly. In other words, plum jobs, sinecure jobs in civil service are going to MHP members as well as to AKP members. So it's really the perfect arrangement for Bahceli. He doesn't want Erdogan to cut a deal with CHP, which would reduce Erdogan's dependence on him, and Erdogan will be able to pursue a lot of policies which are currently under veto by Bahceli. So he issued that ultimatum. In essence, the two separate track but very important processes, normalization in politics and belt tightening in economics, are suddenly coming together. If there are early elections, just even the talk of early elections would end financial flows into Turkey. Domestics will no longer want to hold Turkish lira and go back to dollars. So if you watch my previous videos, Turkey has become a hot money heaven. Everybody's investing into Turkey, and Turkish lira is soaring in real terms. All of this will change. Two, there is really no way to take the next step in the economic austerity program, which is cutting budget deficits. You don't cut budget deficit going into elections, okay? Period. It doesn't happen in a democratic country. Also, it's questionable whether, if so required by inflation turning out to be higher than expectations, the central bank will be allowed by Erdogan to raise interest rates. And this is the picture. The domestics may not read this whole process very clearly because they are more myopic investors. They are mostly retail investors. But for global fund managers who are beginning to dip their toes into, Turkish financial assets, that's a movie they have seen in tens of other countries, and they may bail out immediately. So where do we go from here? Next month is very critical. As I've said, Erdogan is going to get together again with Özal on 20th of July. There is really no official confirmation, but experts claim he will soon visit Bahceli, who is his elder, and he does so out of respect, to sort out their problems. Or there will be a formal meeting between the two leaders of the alliance after the Eid, the feast of the pilgrimage, which lasts 90 days in Turkey. Yeah, we're on vacation, holiday next week. Can they sort out their problems? Personally, I doubt it. But Bahceli and Erdogan have been through thick and thin, and both are very clever in statescraft. So a compromise is likely, is possible. That compromise, but must end dialogue with CHP, which doesn't have much of a market consequence, but it's bad for Turkish politics. Well, this has been another Real Turkey channel video. Thanks for watching me. I love your comments. Keep them coming. Subscribe, share, and have a good weekend. Atilla Yeşilara saying goodbye from Istanbul.